My name is Dan Finucane, and I'm currently a regent. I love folk music, blues music, and I love singing and playing with other people.
My name is Ian Peoples. I'm a Jesuit regent. I'm kind of a football fanatic. Most of my weekends are spent watching at least a few games. I'm probably one of the biggest Lionel Messi fans. Hello and welcome back to MagisTalk. I'm Ian Peoples and I'm joined by my friend and co-host Dan Finucane. And today we are joined by a very special guest.
As you may recognize, he's been on our show before, Father Jeremy Zipple, here in between us. We had him on a few weeks ago for our Meet the Jesuits episode. As you may or may not know, Father Jeremy is about to leave Belize, hopefully just for a short time, to begin the last stage of his Jesuit formation, which is called tertianship. We'll talk a little bit about what that means here in a little bit, but welcome back to our show. Thanks for wearing the appropriate color. Usually people are not color coordinating with us, so we appreciate that.
I remember from last time, I didn't have one of these nice Jesuit
These are
shirts.
just Jesuit shirts, yeah. MagisTalk swag is coming soon, so
It's coming.
if you get on our show one more time, maybe we'll get you a free shirt.
3 times is the deal.
Three
Okay,
times is the deal, yeah.
What about
so
next week?
if you're going to be here, we could just keep this train rolling. You could get back on. Yes, so how's it feel coming up on your last few weeks?
In Belize?
Yeah.
Well, transitions are never easy. I think, as I get a little older, I really don't like them. So I'm not excited about leaving Belize. I love it here. It's been for almost exactly, I think today may actually be, I think I arrived, what is today, the 5th? Mm-hmm. Okay, I think I arrived on the 6th, September 6th, 2019, or 18 rather, so 4 years ago tomorrow.
Wow, okay.
So it's been a great 4 years. I am definitely not excited about leaving. But, I think every transition that my Jesuit superiors have asked me to make that I did not want to make has turned out to be a place of grace. So I am sure this one will be too.
Kind of gets to my first question for you, though. Do you really have to go? That's what the people are wondering.
They want to know.
Yeah.
You want to know.
I suppose not. I could just disappear from my provincial.
That wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be good. No. Father Tom Green, if you're ever watching this, Jeremy's not going anywhere. He's going to listen to you, obey those orders to tertianship.
That's right.
Yes.
Tertianship.
Yeah, so maybe could you tell us a little bit about what is tertianship? Where does that name? It's kind of a funny word. Where does that come from?
Yes. Well, third probation is what it is. Tercera probación en español, because I'm going to Mexico for this thing. Saint Ignatius Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, set up the Jesuits in a much different way than a lot of other religious orders, is the bottom line. Some differences. Well, most orders have 1 year novitiate, followed by temporary vows, and then you renew those temporary vows for a period of time, say 7 years is pretty common. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of those 7 years, you take final vows, and then you're eligible to be ordained a priest, like our brother Franciscans up in Corozal. That's how they would have done it. A year of novitiate, temporary vows for 7 years, and then final vows, and then become a priest. But Ignatius, he wanted to do things a little different. He always wanted to do things a little different. So he set it up to where we have 2 years of novitiate, followed by permanent vows, but not final vows. They are permanent, simple vows, to use the technical canonical term, but they're not solemn vows. So we do 2 years of novitiate. We take these permanent but not solemn vows, not final vows, and then we work for a period of years. Then we get ordained a priest, and then after we've been ordained a priest for 5, 6, 9 years in my case, 10 years, we go off and do this last bit of training. The third part of training. Novitiate is the first probation, and then everything else is the second probation, and then this is the last probation. And after that, this period of 6 months to 9 months, we're eligible to be called to our final vows, our solemn vows. So it's a long process to be a Jesuit, you know. And the weird thing is, we actually take our solemn final vows after we've been a priest for some years. In every other order, it's not the case. You get your final vows, and then you're eligible to become ordained. We've been priests for some years before we're technically full-fledged, finally professed, solemnly professed Jesuits. So I got to do this. After I do this, I will be eligible to be called to my final vows. Doesn't mean it will happen immediately, but at some point after I finish this, I'll get a call from the provincial saying.
Another interesting characteristic of our final vows, in my experience so far, you know, when we do first vows at the end of our novitiate, I think for Dan and myself, it's a really big celebration. Our families come in, some of our friends come in. Maybe not every novitiate has that, or every province, but ours does, and it's kind of a really big celebration. Well, the final vows that I've seen are usually much smaller occasions, even though in the grand scheme of things, final vows are actually maybe in the grand scheme more important, could you say, or a little more meaningful, especially canonically, right? That's the full stamp of approval by the Society of Jesus when we get those final vows, right? And so I think that's an interesting characteristic. So Father Jeremy, when did you enter the Jesuits?
I entered the Jesuits in, 2002, so 20 years ago. I just realized that I had been in for 20 years. One of my classmates posted it on Facebook. He was like, I've been a Jesuit for 20 years. I was like, oh man, I guess I have too, since we're classmates. But yeah, 20 years ago.
How does it feel? I mean, I'm sure people at home are thinking, wait, you haven't taken final vows, you've been in for 20 years.
Yes.
So like, how does it feel to be in for 20 years? And then maybe like, why does it take so long for us to get formed?
The short answer, why does it take us so long to get formed, is because that's the way that St. Ignatius wanted it. He set up a very long program, much longer than any other order had at the time, or still has. And I guess the reason that he wanted it that way was because he really wanted his men to be very educated and very formed, more so than the diocesan priests of his day that didn't have that much education. Things have changed since then, but he really wanted men who had been trained in a very rigorous fashion. Some people joke, you know, the Jesuits are like the Jedi or the Army Rangers, the special forces of the Jesuit Church, of the Catholic Church, which is not true at all. But there is something to the fact that we do have a longer formation than just about anybody. I mean, we're trained to be intellectuals. We're trained to have, all of us are supposed to have advanced training in theology and other things, whereas your diocesan priest might just have basically a bachelor's and maybe possibly a master's in theology. So it's just built into our identity. Our charism is the technical word, as an order, to have a lot of formation, a lot of training, so that we can handle a lot of different situations that we get put into. It's the way that Ignatius wanted it, and it's the way we still do it today.
Yeah, and transitioning a little bit to the fact that you're coming to the conclusion of your time here in Belize, which I think many of our viewers who know you will be sad about that, right?
Especially Yasmin.
Especially Miss Yasmin. Hi, Miss Yasmin. Especially our community will especially miss you as well. But I'm wondering, what will you miss most about Belize?
About Belize? The rice and beans and stewed chicken.
Of course.
The 1, 2, 3. That's right.
I don't even know where to begin with that question. I really do love it here. I guess first and foremost, I'll miss the people. I'll miss my parish, St. Martin's. I'll miss SJC and our students and my colleagues over there. I found Belize to be a place of incredible warmth and welcome, a place where I've gotten to know so many wonderful people who've really been generous in inviting me into their culture and their life and their homes. So the people, number one.
Number one. And then food, and then the rice and beans.
And then the rice and beans, yeah. And last but not least, Reno. I don't want to leave the northern mestizo Spanish foods out either because they're pretty good. They're not as good as rice and beans, but they're pretty good.
But rice and beans it's like a Catholic food. It's pretty universal, right?
Sure.
Everywhere kind of has their unique blend of rice and beans, right?
True.
It's an enculturated food.
I think you could say that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Ian, I forgot to say exactly what tertianship is.
Please, let's go back to tertianship.
So it's a 6-month thing. You know, the beginning of the Jesuits, the first 2 years are novitiate. And as you guys both know, having been through novitiate and taken vows, in the first 2 years in novitiate, we do what most orders do, sort of. We spend time studying the history of the order, the constitutions of the order, the raison d'etre, the reason for the order. What are we about as Jesuits? What does it mean to be a Jesuit? We study the letters of St. Ignatius and our founders, their writings. We do a lot of prayer. It's like a routine that's much more like a monk routine. We do the 30-day silent retreat, the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius. And then we go out and we work in very simple, humble ways. Maybe working with people who are sick in the hospital, maybe working with migrants on the border. We do experiments of simple ministry. And tertianship is basically like redoing novitiate after you have 20 years of experience under your belt. And it's not 2 years long, it's only 6 to 9 months. But you go back and do the same things. You restudy the constitutions. You do the 30-day silent retreat for the second time in your life. So this will be the second time I'll do it, second and only probably. And you go out and you work in kind of simple ways. So it's sort of like going back to the beginning, but now with 20 years of experience knowing on a much deeper way what it means to be a Jesuit, what it means to take these vows and be part of this order. So that's what I'll be doing for 6 months.
Yeah, that's right. And so when we do that first 30-day silent retreat during novitiate, we've only been Jesuits. For us in our novitiate, we do it in November. So we just entered in August. So a few months later, we're doing that 30-day silent retreat. And so now you have 20 years in, redoing the silent retreat. Obviously, that's going to be a huge difference, right? To have all of these memories in your back pocket, all of these experiences of ministry to pull from that are unique. That your life as a priest, right? All these things will add a unique flavor to the silent retreat. And we'll definitely be praying for you during that time. Do you know when you'll be doing that silent retreat?
I think we do it in January.
In January. So let's ask our viewers during the month of January. Let's pray especially for Jeremy and the other tertians. And so that word that we use for that Jeremy's been using is probation, right? Which means we have this first probation, second probation, and third probation. The first is only 2 weeks long.
Oh, that's right.
Second is, again, in Jeremy's case, it's been 20 years long, essentially. And now he's entering that third probation. And what that means is we're actually testing our vocation still, all the way up into the third probation, right? We're still, that word probation means to kind of prove, to test, to sort of prod and see if, to make sure that this is what God is calling us to. So again, that really thorough aspect of our formation is really interesting.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Ian, talking about these 20 years have been full of stories, right, and full of experiences. And so, I think we may have even asked you this the last time you were on, and it stumped you a little bit, as it should, because it's a hard question. But what's a story that you would say kind of captures your time these last 4 years here in Belize? Or maybe that's, maybe just a story that really sticks with you, that you'd like to bring with you from here.
Okay, I hope I didn't tell this one last time.
Even if you did, stories are always worth listening to twice if they're good. So,
I really think that St. Martin's taught me how to be a priest. There's nothing like being a parish priest to teach you how to be a priest, especially in a parish like Martin's, which is a really vibrant neighborhood, but a neighborhood with a lot of needs and a lot of challenges too. But anyway, I have been out I had been out all day, one day, long day. Father Brian was the pastor, and I was the associate pastor at the time, and he was out at the country, so I was manning everything, and it was a long day. I had a funeral, and I think I had a wedding, and some other visits to parishioners I had to do. I got home, it was like 9 o'clock, and back then we lived right up above the parish office, and kind of putting the car in was like going into Fort Knox, because you may know that Martin's was, Father Brian was not funny, but he was robbed at gunpoint one time in the parish office. And so they had, we had kind of made the place a little bit more secure. So if you wanted to get a car out of the garage, it took some time doing, So here I am, I finally get the car in, the door's locked, everything locked up at the parish, and the phone starts ringing, the parish phone, and I was gonna just ignore it. But it kept ringing 3 and 4 times. So finally I answered, and it was a lady, and she said, okay, Father, I'm wondering if you could come over to KHMH and anoint my mom. And I said, well, could it wait till tomorrow morning? Or is it and she kind of hesitated, and I said, okay, well, if it's a pressing thing, then I'm going to come right now. I was feeling the resistance. I wanted to go to bed. I had 6:30 Mass the next morning, but she was indicating that I should come then. So I went over there, and I went into the room, and she's there, and the mother and granddaughter, and I start giving her the last rites. And as I start giving her the last rites, the anointing, the nurse comes in and says she's dying. So she starts dying, and then as I finish the last rites and do the final prayer, the doctor comes in, and she flatlines. The doctor comes in and pronounces her dead. It was a really powerful experience of she was waiting for the sacrament, and as soon as she had it, she was ready to go. She was ready to move on to her Lord. And for me, it was a lesson in being available as a parish priest. I think that's the number one quality that you have to be a good parish priest. You have to show up. A lot of other things people will be patient with you about, but you got to be present for people, especially when they need you. And that's something that I've just learned in general at Martin's and elsewhere, being here, about how to be more generous. Doesn't mean that you can do everything for all people all the time. There's only so many of us priests, and there are a lot of Catholics and a lot of needs. But as much as I can, to have a generous heart that's ready to help people out, especially in their challenging moments, is something that I feel Martin's has really drawn out of me. Martin's will tell you it's the kind of parish where people aren't just going to sit back and wait for you to do something. No, they'll come up and tell you, Father, I need you to do this, or why didn't you do this, which is good. It was a great place to learn to really be a parish priest. Before I got here, I'd been ordained for almost 5 years, but I was only a parish for one of those, and it was sort of a calmer parish in New Orleans, more affluent parish. And then I was working in Jesuit media and Jesuit education, so I wasn't in a parish until I got here. That's one story that stands out.
I don't think that's the one you told last time.
I don't think so.
I think that was a new story. Our viewers will check us on that.
That's right. And you're telling of that story reminds me of just a story from just a few weeks ago, where Mass was getting ready to start at Martin's, and the music was going, and I turned back, and you're dancing with a parishioner, and you've got your alb and your stole and all that on, and I just thought that's a picture there of somebody who has fallen in love with a community, and a community that's fallen in love with you, and that's a real gift.
Well, thanks, Dan. And I do feel like Belizeans expect their priests to be good dancers. It's something that I've worked on. I felt challenged to do better at.
He was practicing his dancing skills at the carnival parade the other day, so...
That's right. That's right.
A slightly different question, or maybe a request, is to tell us a favorite memory that you have, because that was a really difficult memory. Maybe, a joyful one in some ways, about being with a person who's dying, right? But maybe a favorite memory of just one that's just joyful, just pure, something
sure.
that's
There's so many of those. I mean, I remember, probably early on doing a funeral mass at Martin's with the Garifuna Choir, and it was a older parishioner who had been a good and faithful servant, who had been a real integral part of the parish and generous part of the parish. And there was the Garifuna Choir in all their glory singing. And I think I turned to the Garifuna Choir at the end. I said, I hope, I think I said, I hope all of you guys die before me so that you will be there to welcome me, God willing, into the kingdom of heaven, with this music. Because this is what I think it's going to be like to enter the kingdom of heaven, the Garifuna Choir of Angels. The vibrancy and beauty of those liturgies that are so enculturated. I mean, the music and the culture and the, even the kind of the particular theology that's in the Garifuna Mass, that's local to this group of people. It's something I found really beautiful. But really, I'd say so many wonderful masses are all around the place. Masses at Martin's and masses at SJC and Pelote and SJC and SCA, masses at other schools up in Orange Walk, Muffles. Just really wonderful to worship in different ways, and each place has their own flavor and their own music. But to be able to praise God with so many different groups of Belize and lead people in worship and lead people in the sacrament has been a great gift, and so many wonderful memories. Yeah,
that's beautiful, and. You're talking about the church and all, the Catholic Church, the one church, but kind of in all these different flavors, just in the little jewel, right, of Belize. What are your hopes for the Belizean church?
My hope is that we continue to give hope, My hope is that we continue to give hope. I think our young people are like young people anywhere, and that they are looking for faith. It's something that they haven't abandoned, but they ask different questions, and they're a little more suspicious, and they're a little bit more, a little bit more savvy. Sometimes we look at young people and say, oh man, they're just done with this. No, they're not, but they're asking better questions, and they're thinking more than maybe we used to, or our parents used to. They're asking more sophisticated questions, which is good because it challenges us to think more deeply about what we believe, how we grapple with some of the challenging aspects of our faith. So my hope is that we can continue to really meet the young church here in Belize where it's at, and continue to attract a new generation of believers. Let's see, what else? I hope the church can be a voice of change, social change. I mean, there's enduring problems on the south side that we just haven't been able to get around, like the gang violence, like poverty. And at least my hope for my little segment of the church, which is Southside Belize City, is that we can do a better job and more in looking at some of those problems in a deeper way and helping people through the eyes of faith overcome them. So those are a couple immediate things that come to mind.
Sounds like, basically figuring out how to preach the gospel in a way that responds to deep questions, challenging realities, which is, I think, always a challenge for the church, but maybe particularly challenging here in the last few years, last couple decades. I think that seems right on point.
Right.
Seems right on point.
I was heartened. I just saw, we just came from SJC before this show, and I ran into a young man that I don't know very well, but see him around every now and then. And he was at SJC High School for 4 years, and now he's at the junior college. And he said, we had our Mass of the Holy Spirit, which is a tradition in Jesuit schools, opening the school year with a Mass devoted to the Holy Spirit. We had ours last week at SJC. And Father Brian Christopher, the rector of the Jesuit community, was the celebrant. And we had all the students from the high school side, all the students from the junior college side, all the faculty. It was, the gym was packed. It was, a couple thousand people in there. And this young man said to me, as I was walking by, he said, I just have to say, I love the Mass of the Holy Spirit, and that was awesome last week, and every year I love it. It gives me such hope. Well, this young man, as far as I know, he's not like a super, one of these guys that's always in church 24/7, but the fact that the liturgy and the faith and what we're trying to do over at SJC can move his heart like that, and I've heard that from other students too, is a great thing. We're doing a liturgy that speaks to where they are and speaks to their heart and gives them hope and gives them a desire to grow stronger in their faith. So to continue to kind of do that sort of thing, rather than complain about, all right, the young people are never in church, and well, maybe we're not meeting them where they need to be met if that's the case. That kind of thing gives me hope that we can continue to do it.
Yeah, and as you're talking, Jeremy, I'm obviously reminded of our ministry, Dan, out at the prison, where we talk to guys, and the hunger for God's presence, like the thirst for like the mercy of God, the love of God in their life is so palpable, it's so tangible, it's so easily expressed by these men. And you say, meeting people where they're at, Jeremy, I would hope as well that the church does a better job of sort of meeting people in the streets, right? And to call them into the community, right? One thing we've heard when we did like a little synodal discussion, asking guys at the prison what their experience of church has been, and a lot of them said they didn't feel welcome in church because they felt like they were judged. And I know I judge people, so I know I'm guilty of that. But I think maybe that's an aspect of our church here, or just the church in general, that we need to really be aware of, so that we can help work against that, to be inviting people in, to say, hey, you have a space here, right? You have a seat at the pew.
Yeah. Pope Francis famously said, I think it was his first interview as Pope, he said, I want the church to be a field hospital, is how he put it, a place where people who are in crisis, struggling sinners, can come to get treatment, It's not a gathering where people who are perfect. And he's even said that about the Eucharist too. One of his great lines was that the Eucharist is not a prize for the perfect. It is medicine for the sick, And if we can just remember that when we go into church and we look around us, and that everybody in this church is a sinner. Everybody in this church has things that they're not proud of about themselves, that they wish they could make a dent in. And yet everybody is loved equally and infinitely by God. And if we can have that kind of attitude, that we're all here struggling together to try and do it better, then I think we'll get somewhere,
That's right. Kind of makes that mercy tangible.
Mm-hmm.
Shifting gears a little bit, a lot of our viewers probably know that you're a documentarian, a very talented one. If you were going to make a documentary about some topic, some place in Belize, what would it be about?
We stumped him on this one.
You stumped me. I don't know. I'll tell you what. One of my housemates, Brother Glenn Kerfoot. Some of you know Brother Glenn. He taught at the Sixth Form for a number of years. He wants to make a documentary on Hurricane Hattie and how that changed Belize, because that really did change Belize a lot. After someone was just telling me yesterday, before Hurricane Hattie, Belize was somewhere around 40-some% Creole. And about 50% mestizo, I want to say. After Hurricane Hattie, well, now today it's like 25% Creole or less, and 65% mestizo. The Garifuna population has gone from 12% before Hattie to now it's about 4 or 5%. So it really shifted the demographics. Why? Because a lot of people after Hattie migrated up to the States. A lot of Belizeans migrated up to the States, primarily Creole and Griffa. And meanwhile, a lot of people from elsewhere in Central America, because of the wars in the 80s, the civil wars in El Salvador and Guatemala, started coming to Belize looking for a safe haven, and gang violence in Honduras today. So Hurricane Hattie was a big event that people remember that had long-term repercussions on the country. So maybe that's one thing that Glenn wants to do that I think would be kind of interesting. Just sort of a lot of people don't know that history too well, and the people that do know it are getting older. So to be able to capture some of those stories might be worthwhile.
And one of those people who knows that story very well and who was deeply impacted by Hurricane Hattie was Brother Carl Swift, whom we hope to have on the show one day. And he has great stories about his own vocation, coming from Hurricane Hattie in a way, from his family, a Creole family, moving up to the States afterwards, because he talks about how the U.S. basically just gave the green light on Belizeans being able to move up to the States because of the destruction that Hurricane Hattie caused in the country. But yeah, so I would love to watch that documentary, and maybe even Brother Carl would be featured in it as an interviewee. I don't know if he likes to be interviewed though, so that might be another topic of discussion.
Of course. Yeah. Of course, another interesting topic would be the Maya community. We actually, in a couple weeks, we're going to take a group of students from SJC Sixth Form here in the city down to PG, down to Toledo District to do a retreat with, because SJC now has a little satellite campus down there with about 50 students from Toledo District. A lot of them a lot of Maya from the villages. So we're going to do the first ever fusion campus ministry retreat between the campus up here and our new campus down there. And it's really interesting how you guys know this. I mean, several Belizeans. A Belizean told me yesterday that she's 43 years old and she has never been to Toledo, never been to PG. She's going to go this Saturday for the 160th anniversary of the parish down there. But it's kind of the hidden or forgotten district, and the culture down there is really interesting. We have 3 Jesuits working down there now that are in charge of 30-some village parishes. I think you guys had Father Sam on your show before to talk about that. But I'm always interested in I've done some filming down there already, but maybe doing something more on that too, to raise awareness of what's going on down there and what are the challenges the church is facing, and what are the joys the churches are facing down in the forgotten district, if you will.
Yeah, and that'll be a part of hopefully our show. We hope to interview a sister, a Mopan religious sister, Sister Hinya Bold. And so stay tuned for that. We're hoping to have that interview in the coming weeks. One final question just for you, Jeremy, that everyone is wondering is, when will you be back to Belize?
When will I be back? Well,
not if, but when.
Yeah, right. Well, the tertianship lasts for about 6-7 months, so I think I'll be finishing it in end of April or beginning of May in 2023. So hopefully I'll be back after that. It's not a done deal that I'll be back. Ultimately in the Jesuits, you go where your mission, you go where your provincial superior tells you to go. But thus far in the conversations I've had with him, he seems like he wants to send me back to Belize. That's the plan. So God willing, May, next May or June.
All right, well, we'll hold you to that, unless Father Provincial has different plans.
That's right. We'll hold him to it too, as much as we can. Well, thanks again for coming on our show. And of course, as we often do, we have a question that will start with you, and Ian and I will answer it as well. Many of you may know, if you've had a chance to experience it, that Father Jeremy is an excellent cook and baker. We get to experience this a lot. We just had pizza and home-baked chocolate chip cookies last night for dinner. Both were amazing, both instigated by this guy. So we want to ask you, what is one dish that is among your favorites to cook?
Okay, well, let me just quickly say that the pizza last night was equally cooked by these two. I might have started it, but this is a case where the pupils eclipse the master. You guys should see Ian toss some doughs if you haven't already.
Maybe there'll be a feature in one of the shows. How to make a pizza.
That's right.
Yeah, we could do that.
I don't know if we have a Twitter account for the show, but for MagisTalk, but we should post that video.
Yes.
I guess one of my favorite dishes to cook and certainly to eat is gumbo, which is a soup from my part of the world. I'm from South Mississippi, and we're about an hour and a half, 2 hours from New Orleans, Louisiana. And gumbo is a Creole soup from New Orleans that has a little bit of everything in it. It's made with a base called a roux that has flour, basically burnt flour, flour and fat, flour and oil or butter. And you cook that, and that becomes the base. And then you can throw anything in there from shrimp and seafoods to chicken, sausage, spicy sausage. So it takes a long time to really cook a good one, but I do enjoy it when I have some time.
And it's good.
It is good, yeah.
Really
He's
good.
made gumbo several times for the community, and my mouth is watering right now thinking about it. Yeah.
All right, Ian, how about you?
Yes, well, I do cook once a week for the community, and it's usually the same thing. I cook tacos gringos. So that's just basically white person's tacos, it's usually slow cooked chicken that or pork. I really like pork shoulder because that takes on flavors better than chicken does, I think. And so if I could get a little sweetness in there and a little spice, that's the best combination. But that's what I probably like cooking the most, because if there are a lot of leftovers, I'm going to eat them. So it's something I usually like to cook leftovers that I'm going to eat. So tacos gringos is my go-to for the community. I would say it's a simple dish. I'm not a cook like this guy. I also do really enjoy making pizza though. I mean, it is fun. I think at this point in my life, if I weren't a Jesuit, I would open up a pizza place because it's fun. They're fun to make, and pizza brings people joy. So yeah.
And your form is amazing.
My form has been developing over time.
right.
It's not bad.
It's like a perfect circle when it's laid down on the pan.
We do it every Sunday, so it's just been developing, and I think getting better. I think it has been getting better. So Dan, what about you? What's your favorite dish?
I'd have to go with chicken parmesan, just because it's another kind of standard meal that is not too difficult to throw together. People generally like it, and I enjoy making it. I enjoy eating it. I enjoy it for leftovers, and it also goes really well on pizza. If leftovers make it to a pizza night, to put a little chicken parm on a pizza, it might sound strange to you. Trust me, you just gotta try it. It's real good. So I would go with chicken parm.
Well, speaking of all this pizza, we just cooked pizza last night, and we have leftovers in the fridge right now. So I think I'm gonna go have a little pizza for a midday snack. All right. Well, again, Father Jeremy, thank you so much for being with us, and we'll definitely be praying for you in January during your long retreat, and we'll be enjoying the last couple of weeks we have with you until your departure. We want to thank you for joining us today. If you have any comments or people you think we should interview or topics you want to hear us talk about, let us know in Facebook or YouTube if you're watching us in Guadalupe Media's television channel. Thank you for being with us, and I hope you all have a great day.